This segment sponsored by Foster Financial. Welcome back to Money Monday with Foster Financial, where we cover holistic topics that really does apply to your financial value and also your investments. And joining me today is Caleb Doan, their Vice President. Good morning, Caleb.
Good morning.
How's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
Good. Doing good. Okay, so we've been talking about this big, beautiful bill that has been the buzz, around government. And really, I think people are trying to understand how it really does impact them.
Yeah.
And so a really major topic is about the no tax on tips and overtime. So break that down. What is that all about?
Yeah. So that was a big thing that Trump certainly talked about, kind of during his candidacy. I think even Kamala Harris kind of talked about that too, eventually, with no tax on tips and overtime. And now it's actually come to fruition, with some kind of stipulations, of course,
Right.
as everything does in the
Really?
tax code. So. Certainly some stipulations there. No tax on overtime, I think, is a big thing that will apply to a lot of the folks in the area. There's a lot of companies that use overtime. Steel Dynamics, Nucor, Parkview, Amazon, GM, a lot of these big companies are going to use overtime for a lot of their employees. One of the key kind of distinctions with the no tax on overtime, as they're calling it, is that it only applies to the excess income that somebody gets by working overtime. So a lot of times they'll say, hey, if you're working over 40 hours a week, you get paid time and a half or something like that.
Exactly.
So it's that extra half that you would then get to deduct on your taxes, not the full thing.
No. So wait. So let's say that again. It's not time and a half. It's only the half.
Right. That you would get to deduct. So it's kind of the excess amount that you get paid that you would then get to deduct. And then that's subject to certain limits too. So for like someone, a single filer, it's like $12,500 a year. Married filing jointly, it's $25,000 a year of excess overtime income that you'd then be able to deduct on your taxes.
I just need to know what type of overtime will get you to $25,000 or $12,500.
Right.
Like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's a lot of work. Okay,
Right.
That is fascinating. So I didn't realize that caveat. And so how will people really see it applied? Will it be broken down on their actual tax breakdown under their pay stubs?
Yeah, so like this year, I know employers, they're required to report a lot of this, how much their employees are getting in overtime. For 2025, so it actually starts applying in 2025, which is great. I know a lot of people kind of assume that it wouldn't be until the next year. It'll start in 2025. So employers have to start kind of recording a lot of this stuff, giving that information to the IRS. For 2025, I think the IRS said they're accepting, estimates from the employer on how much overtime that they're actually getting. But then, of course, it's going to be on your pay stub at the end of the year, so that people can kind of let their CPAs know, all right, how much did I actually earn in overtime pay, and how much was that higher than what just my normal pay rate was during those times. But it's not terribly uncommon for a lot of those industries that we talked about to have, several hours of overtime every single pay period that they'll then get to deduct a little bit of that.
So when you say 2025 is when it goes into effect, is this like retro to the beginning of this year? Or did they set like a start? Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's the idea, is that it would be for the entire tax year of 2025. So when you're paying in 2026 for 2025, it should apply to the entire year there.
Interesting. So tell me about the benefits of the employer in this, or does it hurt the employer? Is this a win-win for both the employer and employee?
Yeah, it is, because their employees then get to take home a little bit more, and so that's always a benefit to them. Sometimes, employers, they're still going to be able to deduct everything that they're paying to their employees like they normally do, but they know that their employees are taking home more than what they previously were. So sometimes employers, maybe they'll try to give people a little bit more overtime or something like that. Because of that, and employees will want to do a little bit more overtime. So they'll be a little bit more incentivized than what they previously were. Even with the time and a half that a lot of companies pay, it can be hard to get people to do overtime sometimes, right? That's why they have to do overtime in the first place, is because maybe there aren't enough employees to work at those certain hours. So this adds that little incentive, maybe makes the employers a little easier to kind of fill those roles.
Yeah, that's good. That's good motivation for sure. Okay, so that's no tax on overtime. But now let's talk about no tax on tips. How can they really? I guess my biggest thing when I heard this was how are you really accurately calculating tips if it's cash tip?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean,
So-
that can be a piece that like the government is actually trying to start like quantifying a lot of
Right.
this, because there's a lot of industries right now, where barbers or, nail salon workers or something like that, maybe they're not reporting a lot of these cash
Right.
tips anyways.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of an incentive to say, hey, start reporting some of this and you're not going to have to pay taxes on
Okay,
it initially.
so they still want
Yeah.
it to be reported.
Right,
That's interesting.
right.
But then my mind kind of goes to, will we see a shift in the way that payment is for services in the future? Meaning, kind of like if you are a server at a restaurant, they pay them a few dollars an hour and depend on tips. Well, if their tips aren't taxed, are we going to see that model or structure implemented in other service industries?
Yeah, we could
Hope
certainly
not,
see that.
because that's going to be confusing.
Right. Yeah, I know. It can get difficult to keep track of. I know one of the big caveats that they added to this bill, too, specifically for the no tax on tips, was that it needs to be in an industry that like regularly receives tips. So, I mean, it can't be that, all of a sudden we pay our employees in a bunch of tips, right? So then they get it tax-free. It has to be voluntary kind of from the customer, so they can't be obligated to give a tip. But it applies to both cash tips and charge tips, and even like kind of shared tip pools that some restaurants use. Where the servers get it, but then it's shared across other servers or people in the back of the house or something like that.
Right.
So it will only be applied to those industries. The IRS is supposed to come out with a list of the occupations that it applies to this fall, and so I imagine that is going to be a list that's pretty hard and fast, and they're not going to allow people in our industries to be getting paid through tips just to get it tax free.
Right. It's like employers, you cannot get creative here.
Right.
Okay, so from the person, but I do just out of curiosity wonder how this will just change the landscape of reporting to the IRS.
Yeah.
Is it something that, I hate to say, but can be reneged? Kind of like people will start reporting and it's like, oh, just kidding. It's not going to go into effect. And then now they're in trouble.
Right. Well, we know it stops in 2028. So it's only for 2025 through 2028. After that, the legislation would have to get renewed. It would have to be passed again in order for that to happen. And whether that's a big priority or not probably will depend on what Congress looks like, who the president is in 4 years. That can change a lot of this. But right now, it's set to end at the end of 2028.
Okay. Well, that's a nice little trial period.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for breaking that down for us.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you would like more information about Foster Financial, we'll have their phone number and website listed below. Give them a call with more questions, and I'll see you after the break. This segment sponsored by Foster Financial.